Welcome to ongoing election coverage by Town Meeting Television. This is one of many forums we are bringing to you in advance of local elections and town meeting on the first Tuesday of March 2nd, 2021. Town Meeting TV election forums introduce you to local decision makers and connect you with the issues shaping your community. Today, we are here with 5 candidates for Winooski City Councillor. There are 2 positions, and these are 2-year terms. The candidates participating in our forum today, and when I say your name, you can just wave so we know who you are. Jim Duncan is our incumbent. James McCormick. Hi, James. Sam Myers. Hi, Sam. Bryn Oakleaf. Hi, Bryn. And Dallas Wheatley. Hi, Dallas. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for joining us. I want to mention that the public is invited to call in with questions. So I'm going to give you a phone number, 802-862-3966. That's 802-862-3966. If you have a question, call in. Our producers will answer the phone and will allow you to state your question on the air. And then these folks will have a chance to answer. So with no further ado, we can get started. The first thing that we'll do is we want to hear a little bit from you, the candidates. This is an opening statement where we just learn whatever it is that you want to tell us to introduce yourselves. Let's see, you'll have 1 minute to do this. So I'll get the timer set up. And we'll start with our incumbent, Jim Duncan. So, and I will read, an opening statement. Please tell us why you are running and what will be different for Winooski if you are elected. Any thing that mostly answers that question will be great. Jim, do you think you're ready?
Good. Thank you, Christina, and thank you all for being here. As I said, my name is Jim Duncan. I use he, him pronouns. And I'm running because from Main Street redevelopment to engaging all residents in decision-making to weathering a pandemic, our city is facing a lot right now. And as a current city councillor, I'm steeped in these issues, and I've spent the time working in our community to understand where these challenges are and what solutions really look like. As a parent of 2 young kids at JFK Elementary, I'm looking forward to them graduating from Winooski High School to find themselves in a city that has grown and prospered, but where their friends didn't have to leave because their parents couldn't afford it anymore. We've made some good strides and gotten the ball rolling on some crucial issues, but there's still a lot of work to do, and I'm seeking 2 more years on council to make sure we follow through. I'm running because I believe that as we grow, we need to do 4 key things. We need to remain a city where families can start out, thrive, and stay. We have to demand a government that's equitable, anti-racist, accessible, and governed by all those it serves. And we have to ensure our community is changing at a rate taxpayers can bear. These are lofty goals, I know, and we can't do it in 2 years, but we have to keep this momentum. We have to focus on these now. I'm committed to protecting our gains and doing this work on council, with our policy commissions, and in direct dialogue with our community members to make sure this progress and change works for everyone who wants to call Winooski home.
Thank you so much, Jim. For the next person who we'd like to hear an opening statement from is James McCormick. James, yeah, tell us, what do you have for us?
So, hi everybody. Thanks for joining. My name's James McCormick. I was born in Vermont and graduated from Essex High School in 2010. I graduated from Castleton State College in 2014. And in 2017, I moved to Winooski, where I bought my first property and in the process started a property management company. I'm running for city council because I want to serve my community and I want to be the guy that neighbors call on when they have a problem. I've worked for Rights and Democracy. I've run political campaigns for Select Board and the State Senate. I've worked in healthcare IT and public opinion research and now in property management. And I will take my construction knowledge and experience to the City Council to make Winooski a more affordable place to live and raise a family. I think that we can make some better decisions in the construction and planning phases, and to create a community where everybody is treated with equality and dignity.
Thank you, James. Next up, we'd like to hear from Sam Myers.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to let us present to Winooski who we are and why this talented pool of candidates are running. My name is Samuel Myers. I'm 41 years of age. I'm a third generation born and raised in Winooski. I just want to serve my community, tackle problems that will arise, and just be a part of the solutions. I have served on the nonprofit Kenneth R. Myers Memorial Pool Foundation, where we were tasked with raising a significant amount of money set by the city, and we hit our goal. I also served on the Charter Commission, where we were tasked with potential charter changes and having to research those potential charter changes. I've coached my niece's T-ball Little League baseball team here in Winooski. And, I love this community. Winooski has become a vibrant and very diverse community. We do have a lot of challenges facing us in the near future, from an aging infrastructure to figuring out how to grow our tax base with very little open land, and amongst, many other things. So I hope you will consider voting for me. And I look forward to tackling these challenges in an inconvenient time with you guys down the road. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks so much. Next, we'd like to hear from Bryn, Oakleaf.
Yes, Bryn Oakleaf. I've been in Winooski for over 8 years. Started as a renter, have lived on different parts of the city, and bought my first home in 2015. I have so much love for the city, and I've been very engaged with the city council and with the commissions in a variety of ways. But I've also been dedicated to public service. I've actually spent almost my entire career working in the public service sector.
Hello, do you have a call to the show?
11 years
Hello.
with state government.
Hey, Bryn, I'm so sorry, but we have a call. So hold that thought. And yes, hi, caller. Do you have a question?
I do. My question is, why should we vote? Okay. Should I wait?
No, just
I don't understand.
Go ahead.
Okay. My question is for Sam Myers. Why should we vote for a second person from the same family when there are only 4 seats in Winooski? How does he differ from his brother?
That's a really great question. Are we going to continue with the introductions and then we can tackle that question after, or how should we do this, Christina?
Continue.
I think we should continue, and we'll hold that question because it's a good one. And we can do that when we're finished with our introductions. Thank you, caller, for asking that question. So, Bryn, I'm gonna restart you. Let's see. And maybe just if I don't know if you want to restart or start in the middle, but what do you prefer?
I'll just kind of start again.
Okay.
So I want to echo a thanks to Town Meeting TV for holding this forum, to the city staff for all of the hard work they do. It's been a challenging year, for sure, and I think everybody has really struggled in so many ways, known and unimaginable, honestly. So I just wanted to give a chance to say thanks to that. As a write-in candidate, I believe that I think I have the most commitment as a public servant, both as a state employee, former state employee, as well as representing the city of Winooski at the municipal level for Chittenden Solid Waste District, as well as multiple municipalities within Chittenden County as the board chair. I think by selecting me to serve as the city council, you'll see creative ways and different ways to bring a variety of stakeholders to the table to coalesce and have consensus around solutions that are very challenging and are not new to us. So I hope that I can count on your vote.
Thank you, Bryn. Thanks so much. And we'd also like to now hear from Dallas Wheatley. Dallas, tell us.
Hi, I'm, excuse me. I'm Dallas Wheatley. My pronouns are they, them, and he, him. I am a transgender, non-binary person, and I am also a Vermont transplant. So I was not born in Vermont, but I moved here and I chose to live here because I love it. I'm running for city council because I personally know how difficult it is to rent an apartment or a house in somewhere like Vermont. I'm still renting, and as Burlington deals with housing crises for both workers and students, places like Winooski have just seen such an overflow of people who can't and still haven't found a place that they can actually afford. Unfortunately, Winooski still struggles to provide these same people with affordable places to live. And in a community like ours that's filled with immigrants, refugees, and disabled people and seniors, we really need to be diligent in making sure that we're not letting businesses and rental agencies come in and take advantage of us or our neighbors. I really hope to use my experience as a renter myself to work with the council to find ways to provide quality, affordable, long-term housing solutions for renters, and to just be an honest voice on the council about what renters really can and can't afford right now.
Great, thank you so much. Those were great opening statements. We now know a little bit about you. That's so helpful. We can go to the question that we had from the caller now, and then we'll go to some ballot questions. So Sam, I believe the question was addressed specifically to you. So if you can repeat the question or restate and then let us know what your answer is.
Yeah, I think the caller, it kind of sounded like Margaret. I've had some good conversations with her, but having two brothers on the same city council, there's nothing that says that it can't happen. Really, it's going to be up to the Winooski voters and what candidate they want to see on there. Growing up with my older brother, we've I don't know if anybody else has any siblings, but we've had a lot of differences growing up. One of the major ones is I'm a Red Sox fan and he's a Yankees fan. So, that's kind of funny, but, Mike and I don't, there are things that we don't see eye to eye on. And, it's a great question. I can understand where it may make a voter uneasy about voting for me because I do have a brother on city council already. My grandfather served Winooski City Council. My uncle served Winooski City Council. My other uncle has. So I think it's in our blood to serve our community. And again, I don't think Mike and I will see eye to eye on everything. But it's a great question, and I'm not sure if I answered it for Margaret or not. I'm pretty sure that's who it was, but that's the best I can come up with. So
thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
I think we can move now to some ballot questions, and here are a few. There are a few items on the ballot, as you know, and I know the people who are watching are wondering, what is your opinion on these ballot items? Do you support retail cannabis operations in the city? Do you support the call to halt F-35 training over Winooski? So this is your time to talk a little bit about where you stand on some of these ballot questions. Each of you will have 2 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. And the way this works is that since Jim, you went first in our opening statements, we're going to go in alphabetical order now, and James McCormick, you'll be the first one to answer the ballot questions. I'm going to set the time, and James, let us know.
Okay, so Christina, just to clarify, this is not on a specific article on the ballot, just ballot items in general.
Yes, it's like it's basically to help you address ballot items. You could choose to address the 1 or 2 that I stated, but if there are others that you're more interested in, that's okay too.
Okay, fantastic. So I guess I will start by saying on the issue of the F-35s, I will be voting in support of the Article 6 as is to urge the state to halt the F-35s. I think some of the importance of this issue and of this vote is that this will result in everybody having their voices heard. So we're going to have a total vote count at the end of the day. And from there, we're going to have a better idea, I think, of how residents feel about this issue and can proceed accordingly. If there's overwhelming support from voters in Winooski to halt the F-35s, then I think there's kind of two things that benefit from there. The first being that formation of kind of a coalition between Burlington and South Burlington, Winooski, in that coalition representing or urging the State House to take action, as well as having that that vote count support will make for a more compelling case for our Winooski representatives, Colston and Small, to argue or urge on behalf of residents in Winooski at the State House.
James, hold on just a moment. Hold that thought. It looks like we may have another call. Caller, are you there? Hold on. Sometimes it takes a little bit. Let's see if the caller is still there. I'm going to ask the producer.
Okay, go ahead, caller.
Hold on just a moment. Hold that thought. It looks like we may have another call. Caller, are you there? That's the lag.
Yes. I don't know if I'm being heard.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that me?
Yes, go ahead, caller.
Okay. Hi.
I think you're listening to the YouTube.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Turn your YouTube link off.
Okay. My question was, how do you feel the city can
It's a cliffhanger. Caller, are you there? Let me ask the producer. I just asked the producer if we can have the caller call back or if we can call them back. I don't know if we lost connection.
Go ahead, caller. Go ahead. You're on now.
Okay. My question was, how can Winooski address the climate crisis? What specific policies do you recommend that Winooski can enact in order to lower our carbon emissions as a city?
Okay, so for this one, let's start with Sam Myers and go ahead and start with 2 minutes and we'll go around. Sam, unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Sure thing.
All right. Oh, great question. I feel, the more electric vehicles that get on the road, I think that will eventually address, a major issue of the climate crisis. I drive a Prius myself. So I feel if we all just do our part, in addressing the climate crisis, we should be able to drop the level significantly. And I don't have a lot more information on that, so I'm gonna kind of just leave it at that. So
great, thank you, Sam. Can we hear from Bryn, Oakleaf? Maybe if you remember and can restate the question, and then let us know what your thoughts are.
Sure. So I believe the caller asked what councillors will do to respond to the climate crisis, and most specifically to address the greenhouse gas contributions that the city makes. So I've dedicated my entire career to environmental law and policy. And within the last 2 years, I've joined working for Efficiency Vermont and work and know from that experience that a significant percentage of the residential sector, the buildings themselves are not well insulated. And that's why the governor and the legislature are looking to insulate over 120,000 homes within 10 years. I think that as a counselor, that I'll work to ensure that our home inspections and our development review board are looking in particular at how projects are going to help meet the building energy standards, to address weatherization and to bring new incentives at the city level to drive weatherization, and to work with the state legislatures to allocate funds to our residential buildings as well.
Great, thank you, Bryn. Dallas, we'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Absolutely. So what can Winooski do to address the climate crisis? A little bit of background. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental studies. I have a master of science in climate and quaternary studies. I'm an environmental activist. I think we should make it very clear that while individual impact is admirable and individual efforts are admirable, at the core of a climate crisis comes from infrastructure and corporations. So when we're thinking about how Winooski can approach the climate crisis, we need to be thinking about how Winooski approaches infrastructure. And first things first is to make sure that we are giving everybody in our community access to public transportation so that they're not needing to turn on their car and warm it up for half an hour in the winter when they just need to go a mile down the street to pick something up at the grocery store. We need to make sure that we're providing people with these options so that they can focus less on their own impact. And then the Winooski city can focus more on, like Bryn said, looking into our infrastructure, looking into weatherizing, and making sure that as a whole and as a community, we're not making a bigger impact than we should be.
Great, thanks, Dallas. We appreciate the answer. Jim Duncan, we'd like to hear from you, Jim.
Great, thanks. So as to what the city council can do to address the climate crisis, I see there's 3 levels that we need to be working at. One is at our local level. We have codes, form-based code incentives around energy efficiency that aren't being used, and that needs to be fixed. There's other opportunities in our zoning to further incentivize construction or efficiency in new construction. And I hope that we can find ways to also include energy generation as part of that new development. I think the second piece locally is really continuing to expand the work that's already been done to bring weatherization as part of sound mitigation. I think there's a real opportunity for leveraging additional funds here in the city. We need that. And I think Bryn made a great point for that. And we need to just find ways to bring in our partners and find how to get 2 birds in 1 stone and more bang for the buck out of those weatherization programs. And that brings us to the second level in regional partnerships. I think there are many opportunities, like with Green Mountain Power and with others, to begin reducing our heating bills so that we can have more efficient housing and more efficient approaches to heating our homes. And then I also think at the state level, we need to be advocating for participation in robust and active climate partnership and climate action. I was proud to sponsor resolution supporting the Transportation and Climate Initiative, which unfortunately was not joined by Vermont, but I think still provides a viable framework for the region to lower greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. And we need to continue supporting that and advocating and saying how Winooski needs to be a part of these partnerships. Winooski is very different from Vermont, so we need to be making our place at the table when we're talking about how to do state and regional climate reduction acts. So I think that is going to be a critical component, is continuing to advocate at the state level for our participation in regional efforts, because even us as a city, we can only do so much. We're going to need a concerted effort and support from the state and from the region to make significant reductions in greenhouse gases.
Great, thank you. My timer was going off. Jim, you finished just in time. James, we'd like to hear from you now a little bit about your thoughts.
Awesome. Yeah. So there are three things that I had thought of. One of them being, I know Montpelier introduced through their public transportation, they introduced a program where the buses won't run if they're empty, to just reduce the driving of those buses unnecessarily. So a program like that, I don't know if that could be implemented in the, Winooski and Burlington bus routes, but if so, that would be a good program to utilize, or the on-demand function of that as well, just to reduce buses running unnecessarily. The aspect of efficiency within the existing homes is something that, as Jim mentioned as well. I originally had over $100 for heating bills in the winter after, using proper insulation and other weatherizing, construction moves, was able to, my last bill for heat was, around 45. So, I mean, you can spend a small amount of money sometimes to drastically reduce the amount of heat you are using, and more specifically, the amount of heat that is leaving your house. So those types of things are going to reduce the amount that's used. But that is also through, natural gas. Natural gas heats a lot of homes rather than solar panels. I think one thing that would be interesting is, I know, Burlington has a municipally owned utility company. If Winooski was able to partner or have a solar or wind turbine as part of how we generate energy that's able to provide energy to the community, that would be pretty interesting to explore as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Christina, I believe when I received the instructions, they said there was an option for a 30-second rebuttal.
That's true. So at this time, those of you who want to take the option of a 30-second rebuttal could do that. Dallas, did you want to start us off?
I do. I just have one thing to say, and that's there has been consistent research in cities that taking cars off the road and putting more bus routes actually reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So I don't agree with the Montpelier initiative to stop running buses when they're empty, because I believe we need to be putting more buses on the road and investing in higher quality buses and transportation so that people aren't tempted to be driving their cars everywhere. And then we can also provide safe havens for homeless people in the winter. That's my rebuttal. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dallas. Does anyone else want to take 30 seconds to join a rebuttal effort? Bryn?
Yeah, absolutely. So just adding on to my earlier response, I think as a council, I'll also seek to be creative in how we do provide additional incentives that Jim was talking about. So if our current incentives aren't being taken advantage of, why not? Can we encourage assistance with our own infrastructure build out for efficiencies, for carbon reduction, greenhouse gas reduction, and decarbonization entirely with the developers, so that it's there's a win-win there. So we have the opportunity to increase our tax base, and at the same time get support
wrap that up.
And get support that we have, get the support that we need for many projects to achieve those goals.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to take a 30 seconds to add a rebuttal?
It's 6 o'clock.
It's 6 o'clock. My computer knows that, and so now we do. Okay, it looks like we have another caller. So we finished a round where we talked a little bit about the environment and climate solutions, and now we can take a call. Let's see what this caller has to ask us. Hello, caller, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you state your name and your question?
Well, absolutely. Thanks so much for taking my call. This is Kevin Lumpkin. Thanks for all the candidates for taking the time to answer our questions. It's great to have so many options. Wondering about the candidates' positions on Article 4 on our sample ballot for this town meeting day about retail marijuana operations. going to assume for the moment that it's going to pass. If it passes, it says something about being subject to regulation by council. And I wonder what your thoughts are on what appropriate regulation, if any, would be for retail marijuana operations if they're approved.
Okay. That's a great question. Do you remember who started first, the last question, by any chance? Maybe it was you, Dal?
I think we were talking about the Act 164 cannabis sales with James, but then we got a call and that went away. So I think he started first last round. Was that right?
Yeah. I started with the ballot measures, and then we moved on to caller before.
Yeah.
So do you want to?
Shall we answer the question that the caller asked and start with you, James?
I am happy to do whatever. So let's do that. So yeah, in regards to Article 4 and Act 164, just a little bit of clarification from my understanding as well, is that this does not mean that retail cannabis will be located in Winooski. It means that the city will be open to it, is how I had interpreted that as well. It's not that it will be moving here. It's just that the city would be open to it. But to address one of the callers' comment about what is appropriate regulation by the council, I immediately coming to mind is the location of it. I think it's fair to say that people don't want it near like there's the school systems, and probably out of the public eye a little bit in an area that is going to have expected foot traffic and parking. So it would also need to be in a place that can accommodate those types of logistical issues. On the subject of how I will be voting on Article 4, I am going to vote in favor of it. I think as long as pharmaceuticals and tobacco and alcohol are all legal, then I can very easily support recreational cannabis, especially because that would remove it from the illegal market. So that's my stance on it.
Great, thank you. The next person who can address the question, if we're going in order, Sam, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I am in full support of Article 4, which James did mention. It'll explore cannabis retail sales in the state, and I hope it comes to Winooski because I think it would generate more employment, tax revenue. There are some, concerns due to road safety, misuse prevention, and you got to think about racial equity when if this does come to Winooski. So yeah, I'll support that 100%.
Great, thank you, Sam. We appreciate that answer. Bryn, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for the question. I believe that I'm thinking you're the chair of the Development Review Board, so a very astute question to ask as it relates to your purview. Actually, I participated in the city council call the night that it was decided to separate the question into two. One was about retail and the other was about manufacturing. It was also discussed that if zoning ordinances needed to be changed, that they would have to be done, that would have to be accomplished before that regulations were written at the state level. So there's some work on the council's hands within the next year to 18 months before retail can be cited within the city. So there is some work on our hands. I do think that it should be regulated similar to alcohol. I think that legalizing marijuana is accomplishing decades of disparities and addressing decades of disparities. I think that similar to anything, if there's going to be abuse of a certain substance or or an addiction, that those programs we've developed and have put in place with the Department of Health, and those are things that we can also address at the school level with our youth, is preventive awareness and prevention programs. So I support it, and I do recognize that the City Council has a bit of work to do in updating our ordinances. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Bryn. We'd like to hear from you, Dallas. Tell us your thoughts.
Super pleased to see that we're having this ballot measure, because it, like Sam and Bryn said, it's going to be addressing a lot of the historical racial disparity we have. And I am in full support of allowing recreational cannabis sales into the city in two parts, because not only will it provide a great template for the rest of the state and for, you know, the rest of New England, we can serve as a model, but also because if the City Council chooses to regulate and tax, we will have another stream of funds in, and we won't have to rely so much on property taxes, which I think right now makes up about 80% of our revenue, which is a large portion, far too large in my opinion. But I'm also in favor of heavily regulating it, because if we're allowing the legal sale of cigarettes, and if we're allowing the legal sale of alcohol on the main street in a strip mall, that is exactly where marijuana should be. That is exactly where cannabis should be sold. It should be treated like every other legal drug that we have. And it should be treated as such with our kids as well. We should be teaching them not just prevention, but if they choose to use safely. And that's something that we do with our kids when we give them things like beer at a 16th birthday party. I'm not saying you should do that, but people do that in this country and people do that in this state. And we need to have that same sort of consciousness about cannabis. We can't keep treating it like it's some kind of gateway drug, because that's just going to lead to further racial oppression, further racial bias.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Dallas. We appreciate that. Jim, we'd like to hear from you.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin, for the question. Looking at specifically that part that you called out, appropriate regulations was language that really allowed me to be fully in favor of this ballot measure being on the ballot. I support this ballot measure being in front of voters. I'm very interested to hear what the cities of Winooski think about this issue, and I will be voting yes as well for many of the reasons others have mentioned. But that appropriate regulations is key, because we don't know what the rules are going to be from the state, and we don't know what level of control the local cannabis commissions are going to have. And I think from the discussion on the council, based on what the current council has talked about, issues around signage and around advertising and how that is structured and not geared towards youth or not impacting youth, the locating of these retail facilities away from areas where students gather is important, as well as ability to regulate nuisances from the presence of these businesses. We've had some issues with hemp drying down at the old carpet factory, and we had odor complaints that we couldn't really accommodate because our zoning regulations didn't deal with that. As you well know, you got to deal with that through the DRB. And I'm a little bit, I wish we had the rules from the state first. And because we don't, I want to have this ballot measure to show Winooski is ready to do the work, to get the regulations and ordinances in place to be able to allow licensees in, but it has to be on terms that work for Winooski. So as we are looking at this and doing this work, we, I think, need to make sure that that ballot question reserves us some ability to really look at what the state says we can do, and then what we need to do to make sure this retail operations will work in terms of parking, in terms of signage, in terms of odor, and in terms of security of the premises for the safety of everyone.
Great, thanks, Jim. The next question, I think we sort of covered a ballot question, which is this one. And I just want to move to the next, which is simply stated, do you support the city budget? And let's start with, well, we started with James last time. So Sam, if we're going alphabetically, you'll be next. Do you support the city budget?
I do support the city budget, yes. And, you know, I had a good talk with Mayor a lot, and, you know, she came up with, you know, there's reasons why voters should support the city budget, as no services are being cut. Winooski is also able to maintain services while keeping the rate increase low. And, you know, it doesn't add any, from my understanding, it doesn't add any new staff or services to the budget. So, you know, she mentioned that there's a grant funded, 3-year grant funded equity director position, that after 3 years, if it's beneficial to the city of Winooski, we would have to fund that ourselves. But I 100% support it. I think Winooski should, because if they don't, they're going to have to come up with another plan. And from what I've read about it, I like it, so I support it.
Great, thanks, Sam. Bryn, do you support the city budget?
Thank you. I do support the city budget. I think that essentially, you know, having experienced this as a state employee, that level funding is really tough. It's really straining on city services, because there's some expenses that continue to go up and others that you can maintain, but oftentimes the uncontrollable expenses relate to basically pay and salaries, guaranteed steps. So I think the city has done a great job. I think the council has worked hard as well to ensure that taxes at the city level aren't increasing. I think that with the school budget, we are going to see a little bit of an increase there. That's not unusual, and I also think that that's not entirely in the control of the school board and the trustees. I think that we need to work harder with our state legislators to say that we're having an undue burden. Our cost per pupil is low, but our tax distribution is really high as it relates to that. And I see it as being unsustainable, honestly. So while I think this current budget is something that I support, I think looking forward and seeing the capital projects coming down the line, seeing the tax assessment up ahead within the next 2 years, 3 years, that we're going to have to take a hard look at where our controllable and uncontrollable expenses are, and really address in short order increasing revenues as well as mitigating our operational costs and finding efficiencies. Thank you.
Thanks, Bryn. Dallas, do you support the city budget?
I do. I support it for now. I was looking into the budget, and I was reading up on it in the budget documentation, and I actually think the city budget puts far too much money into TIFs and not enough into community services and community development. I personally think that the city really needs to prioritize making the public amenities we currently have more accessible to our current residents before we even contemplate commercial or residential growth. Because if we can't care for our current residents as they stand, how can we hope to care for new residents? And the way I look at the budget now, we aren't caring for our current residents based on that budget. So I support the budget as it stands now, but I want people to think about how we can improve our budget for the next round and how we can take the money that we have and actually put it towards the people that we have.
Great, thank you, Dallas. Jim, do you support the city budget?
Believe it or not, I do. I voted for it, and I'm actually really proud of the work that our city has done, our city staff has done on this budget. I encourage everyone else to vote yes. As others have noted, this tax increase is below the cost of living, yet cuts no services, continues to maintain our investment in our infrastructure projects that the community has asked for, and invests in key additional things that we really need as a community right now, specifically sidewalks, after-school programs, and the systemic change to fight racial injustice and make the city more equitable. I think they've done an amazing job at being fiscally prudent, at managing their staff and their expenses well. And I think we're reaping the benefits of that now by being able to still reprioritize when needed. For example, our sidewalks are missing or badly in need of repair. And even before COVID, I heard regularly from those with disabilities or using walkers and wheelchairs that they can't pass our sidewalks, depriving them of their connections to services, to our government operations, to businesses. And this shouldn't be happening in our community. So with this budget, relief is on the way. We will create new or upgrade or create new sidewalks within the city. Second, I've been advocating for 2 years for our after-school program, Thrive, and the director, Kate, is doing an amazing job at taking this unrecognized gem in our community and building it up further. And this budget invests in that, and it makes it a part of the general fund, which I think is a significant victory for after-school care and for caring for our children in this community. And finally, as Sam alluded to, there's this additional funds that have come into the city around equity. This includes an equity director, an expansion of the school's successful community liaison program to break down walls of language and culture in accessing our government, and the development of an equity council to really fully integrate issues of equity inclusion into our decision-making process. And this budget includes that as well. And I'm more than anything excited that we are going to be going down this road on those issues and making commitments and sustained effort to make these things work and outlast us all as councilors.
Great, thank you, Jim. James, do you agree with the city budget?
Yeah, so I do support the existing budget. My understanding is it's up from about 7.6 million to about 8.2. And I do understand the predicament that Winooski is in. You know, there's a fairly small population and needs to generate a lot of money to run the city. So I do think that there's a couple of key things, though, that we can't negotiate on the city council, which would be raising property taxes. I'd rather see, find funds from other sources rather than doing that. And I think that there's programs that receive very small amount of funding that would benefit greatly from even a slight increase to funding, like the Thrive After School program that was mentioned. These are community services that offer a lot and they receive very little. We also have that school liaison program, which engages in members of the community that don't speak English as a primary language. And I also think that we could be spending more money on our existing city infrastructure like water and sewer lines.
Great, thank you, James. It looks like we have a caller who called during that round, and perhaps we can see what they have to ask. Caller, are you on the line?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jen, and my question is, will you prioritize getting the Main Street revitalization project done, and how will you engage the council on this project?
Thank you, Jen, for that question. And we'll start off. Sam, do you have a response? And then we'll go around. You each have 2 minutes.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
So I believe the question was, Bryn, do you remember the question?
Do you intend to finish the Main Street revitalization project?
And how will you engage the council was the second part that I heard.
Thank you.
Great. I knew between a couple of us, we would have that question. Excellent.
Yeah, so I am all for the Main Street revitalization. It's something that is needed. There are wooden pipes under there that are 100 years old, and it needs to be replaced. You know, we can't have water main breaks and keep putting Band-Aids on an aging infrastructure. So I will definitely be, I want to see this project come in under budget or close to budget as possible. And again, I'm going to work hard to make sure that happens. Again, we have an aging infrastructure. Projects like that, Winooski needs it, and I'm for it. So, thank you.
You're muted.
So I think you were calling my name.
You can read lips. That's another qualification of this job.
Indeed. I actually think we've also gotten out of order a little bit. I think Dallas was supposed to take go first for that last question. So,
oh, sorry. I also said there was something wrong, but
it's honestly, it's impressive that you can keep up. So I think that this is very challenging. So you're doing a great job too.
Dallas, we'll have you first maybe on the next question. And then Bryn, if you can answer this one, you've got 2 minutes.
Okay. So with these capital projects, I think Main Street is one of several that we're looking at that have received voter approval. You know, one thing that James actually mentioned before about decisions being left to the voters, but something I've been consistently disappointed about is the voter turnout. For town meeting day, on average, less than 20% of the eligible voters are voting. When we're facing increases in budget, however large or small they might be, taking on that debt and taking on that responsibility for other residents is, I think we should all encourage our neighbors and our friends and family members to vote, because that impacts us all. And when we are making these decisions with such a small, limited population, then we hear about the complaints about the stress and strain. So I really want to urge folks to vote at town meeting day, not just for the candidates, but also for the budget and how that impacts you. So as we look at these capital projects, they have received voter approval. I don't know exactly what percentage of the eligible voter base approve them, but we need to keep in mind the entire voter base and the entire residents of Winooski, not just eligible voters as far as the impact. Businesses, we're working on a charter change for all residential voting. So when I really encourage a phased approach so that we have as little impact and as much review throughout the process, so that we can mitigate having a big hole similar to what Burlington is facing. You know, we certainly don't want to get into any lawsuits. We want to see projects move forward and smoothly and on time and on or under budget.
Great, thank you. Dallas, would you like to share your thoughts on this topic?
Absolutely. I'm incredibly eager to see the Winooski revitalization process be finished and completed. And I know all of us have at some point in our lives experienced the mind-numbing pain of having construction right outside your house. And I really want all of this construction to be finished, and I want the revitalization to be finished, but I really want it to be done right more than anything else. And I want to be able to go into city council and sit down with the councillors and make sure that we're doing it right and that we're not taking shortcuts in order to finish it as fast as possible. Because if we take shortcuts, we're going to end up making mistakes, and we're going to end up having issues like pipes that burst, like our old pipes already do. And I want Winooski's infrastructure and I want Winooski's revitalization to be something that lasts. And more to the point, considering the how Winooski can help with the climate impact, what we need to do when we're going into the remainder of our revitalization is consider that climate impact, not just during the building process, but how it's going to impact the climate as it sits there for the next 10 years. How are these businesses going to run? How are the how is the energy going to be paid? Are we going to try to subsidize making our businesses more solar paneled, like more solar powered, or are we just going to let the business owner decide? I think this is an important discussion that we need to have, not just for our economy, but for all of the concerns that we have about Winooski. And I think we need to be really cautious about how we continue with our revitalization and not just rush through it to the end.
Great, thank you. Jim, do you want to share some thoughts on this topic?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just for historical perspective, the Main Street Revitalization Project started as form-based code discussions, 7 years ago. So this community has been talking about what Main Street should look like for a long time. And this is now at the point where we're close to 90% design documents on Main Street. We've secured numerous grants and some significant funding to offset the burden on taxpayers that involve actually replacing the water infrastructure within a certain time. So we have to do some of this work, or we're going to lose our grant funding and pay more in property taxes for these improvements. And the serviceable life of a wood water main is well past for anything on Main Street at this point. So we're any delay, in my mind, on our infrastructure improvements along this corridor is a disaster waiting to happen. And I fully support an aggressive timeline, and I've proposed this on council and continue to support this. There is a more upfront cost, but it saves us money in the long run. We'll pay less on debt service if we don't phase this Main Street revitalization. That is an option to have 3 or 4 years of construction as we work our way down the corridor. It spends less per year, but we accumulate expenses of winding down and starting up the construction each year. There's traffic impacts, there's lost revenue impacts for businesses along Main Street, and they're very concerned. I've heard from businesses that are very concerned about having a delay or having impacts of construction outside their businesses going on for 2 or 3 years. It has to coordinate with the school construction, it has to coordinate with the exit 16 reconstruction. So there's a lot of pieces in play, but I think we're close to actually realizing the vision that community articulated in form-based codes. And I'm fully committed to making sure that our Main Street looks the way the community envisioned, and it'll match the new development that's coming in with the infrastructure that it needs to thrive.
Great, thank you, Jim. James, are you ready to talk to us about Main Street?
Absolutely. So, I would support the ongoing efforts. I know that there is money that we have access to now that if we wait might not be available. So it seems like the time to act is now, and it could be generating a lot of revenue and in turn tax money for the city once it's finished. So I think there is incentive to work and get it done now. One thing that I don't necessarily want to give up in the deal is my understanding is that the Planning Commission has incentivized for developers to eliminate or reduce parking spaces with these new development plans. And that is one thing that I wouldn't want to give up. I think there's only so much parking spaces available, and that just is something that I wouldn't want to negotiate with. One other thing too, as we're talking about, these expensive endeavors, I know there's a statistic that 62% of students in the Winooski school system qualify for free or reduced lunches. So, I would rather, if we have the money for this project, I would rather see it going towards issues that address poverty.
James, can you repeat that? What's the percentage of students?
62% was what I had heard from a 2020 study from the school board or the school district of Winooski. Okay. So 62% of students in Winooski qualify for free or reduced lunches. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Sam, have you talked to us about Main Street yet? Or
I did, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Is there a chance for a rebuttal?
So it's 6:30. We have a caller. There's a strange noise in my house. We have a caller. So yeah, we have time for rebuttal and then we'll take the call. Bryn, would you like to start us off with that?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. So in thinking about the impact of the infrastructure, the capital projects, Jim hit on a good point that it's not just our projects we need to think about, but it's the state double diamond interchange that is scheduled to occur at exit 16. That significantly impacts our economy. That's an extremely important artery into Winooski and to commuters that are going into Burlington. When that's shut down, they're going to have to go all the way to exit 14 because there's no off ramp southbound at exit 15. So I argue that a phased approach is not entirely a terrible idea, considering having extremely limited access for 2 years or phased impact for a year or two more.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else want to provide a 30-second rebuttal? Okay, we have a caller. Let's see if we can hear what they have to say. Caller, are you on the line? It takes just a second.
Yes.
What is your question? We'd love to hear it.
Thank you. Are you aware of peer-reviewed science challenging the telecommunication industry's funded science that exposes the health risks of cell phones, cell towers, Wi-Fi, and the 5G rollout? If so, are you willing to push for a moratorium on rolling out 5G in Winooski? And if the school has it, the Wi-Fi, are you willing to get Ethernet corded systems into the school to stop Wi-Fi from being used in the school? Thank you.
Okay. So, Dallas, would this be the right time for you to be first?
Well, I'm not a biologist, so I can't speak on the validity of any research done into the impact of Wi-Fi on human health, but I firmly believe that improving our connectivity is going to help our disabled residents and our disabled students the most, because as we've seen with COVID and as we've seen with the pandemic, having a greater connectivity is critical, not just for workers, but for students as well. And allowing students access to Wi-Fi, not just at school, but making sure that we have access to connect to stable Wi-Fi connections in our own city means that we're going to further empower our disabled citizens and our students themselves.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Jim, do you want to talk to us a little bit about Wi-Fi?
Sure. I don't think there's anything to the 5G health piece yet because it's only been around for 2 years. It's not possible to know if there are long-term health effects. I think that I'm trusting the science coming out of peer-reviewed journals like Nature to tell us that we do not have any cause for concern at this moment. I'm sure they'll continue to look at it. As far as whether to regulate wireless in the school, that would be a school board, school district decision. But certainly any other public health hazards that we face here in the city where the city can actually make a difference that isn't under the jurisdiction of a larger entity like the Public Utilities Commission, I would support looking at any and all. I think this goes back to things like our cannabis siting and thinking about how our choices around retail will affect the public health outcomes for kids and adults in our community.
Great, thank you, Jim. James, talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so I was not aware of some of the health concerns that were mentioned. That's something that I would have to learn more about to make a more educated decision on. But in terms of kind of the importance of people having access to the internet, I think this pandemic has proved how necessary that really is for all of us in our daily lives, work lives, seeking education, and I think it's had a tremendous positive impact on schools as well. So I guess to make a further ruling, I would need to learn more about that.
Great, thank you, James. Sam, we'd like to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, that's a really tough question, and I can't speak on the impact of Wi-Fi on human health. So, but I think it's imperative that our schools should be equipped with Wi-Fi, and even our libraries, for access for all of our residents to have that access. So I'm going to leave it at that, because I honestly can't speak on the impact of Wi-Fi and human health. So it's a great question, though.
Great, thank you. Bryn, do you have some thoughts on this topic that you'd like to share?
Thank you, Christina. And thank you for the caller for the question. So I think that as far as Winooski's youth goes and access, the concern really is access to the actual internet in its entirety. I mean, that topic is being tackled at the legislature. There is a digital divide, having not just access to the internet, but whether or not it should be considered a public utility and made affordable and be regulated as such. And as far as health concerns go, I think my concerns as far as the school goes is actually relates more to indoor air quality. I know that with the school development that it'll be under new building energy codes, and that will address indoor air quality. But we shouldn't take into account, we should always take into account the proximity to the highway. And I think also, as far as health goes, it's about cyberbullying, and make sure that we're addressing that. So as it relates to the internet, I think those are some of my concerns. But in addition to that, at the school level, K through 12, we really also need to think about ensuring that the farm to school is supported, and that fresh and nutritious meals and food are available. Is there a share table? Does the school support that? To James' point, over 60% of the students are eligible for free and reduced meals. That actually makes the school eligible for universal meals, and likely already is part of that program. So those, for me, those are my interests and those are my concerns.
Great, thank you, Bryn. Dallas, we'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this topic?
I started.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Well, we want to hear from you again, Dallas. We don't hear enough from you.
I can talk more.
I'm just kidding. I wonder if we have any more callers. I'm going to ask the producer.
No more callers.
Okay. It might be best now to, let me think, we have time. I think we're going to need to do our closing statements. I know you want a chance to answer, 5-10 more questions, but I don't think we have that time tonight. For a closing comment, we're going to take about 30 seconds and just think about, there are people who are watching.
If I may, I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I would really like to put forth that all of the candidates answer the questions on racial justice before we proceed to our closing comments. If we don't have time for that, that is totally all right. I just think that this is something that we really need to talk about.
Great, thank you. I totally appreciate that, Dallas. So it's what we could do is, what if we cut down the time? Like instead of everyone having a bigger chunk of time, we just take a slightly smaller amount of time, but we still get to answer a question on racial justice. You want to try that? Okay, I'm going to read you one. Where do you see opportunities for addressing racial justice in the community of Winooski, and how will you use your select board seat to meet this challenge? So why don't we take like around a minute each so it's kind of like half of what you've been working with, and think a little bit about how you might answer that question. And if Dallas went first last time, then we're going to be going to Jim.
Great, thanks. I think this is hard to do justice in a minute on this topic. So I'm just going to skip to what I would do. I would support vigorously the equity initiatives that I've already talked about. We have 3 great programs rolling out that I think we need to fully support, because if they aren't done well, then they will potentially be more damaging than helpful. And I am fully supported. I'm fully committed to doing that work. I helped develop those programs, and I'm really excited with the partnerships we built around that grant application and realizing the fruits of that labor. In addition, I think we can work with our staff in the city to change the way we talk about and conduct the business of government. We make it much too hard for people to engage and attend meetings. We need childcare, we need meals, we need transportation, and we need to meet people where they are. And that's something that I've been actively doing for 2 years and will continue to do. And finally, we need to bring more BIPOC residents into government. We need a body of leaders that looks more like the city that it leads. And I would use my time on council to recruit and mentor people of color to hold positions of power on our commissions, on the newly formed Equity Council that would be highly functional, impactful, and in our staff, and ultimately on City Council. In 2 years, I fervently hope I'll be campaigning for a resident of color to take my place rather than for myself.
Thank you, Jim. You did a great job answering that question in 1 minute. It's hard to do. I can feel that it's like more rushed. Let's continue with the 1 minute, even though it does seem kind of tricky. James, can you speak to us a little bit about that topic?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Racial justice in 1 minute. So two things jump to mind immediately. One is the relationship with the police. My experience, I'm a 6 foot white male. My experiences with the police have been positive in Winooski, but I don't know that my experience is indicative of other people that don't have the same identity as me. So I think to solve that issue, we really need perspectives of everybody within our community. One thing I think we could do that would be able to help, I think, is to have more of an integration of emergency medical services with the police responding to calls. So there might be calls where the appropriate response is to send someone from EMS over a police.
Great. Thank you, James. Sam, we'd like to hear a little bit from you on racial justice.
Yeah, I'm in full support of the Winooski Strong anti-racism campaign. Their campaign, raises funds and awareness for anti-racism in Winooski and beyond. And just seeing all the community and the community engagement, all the co-sponsors, it just shows that here in Winooski, we take care of everybody. We take care of our own. And I want to offer my constituents good governance above all else. And we need to treat everybody well and respectfully, and even ones that we disagree with. Winooski does offer many commissions here where I think, as Jim said, we should be doing everything we can to get more new Americans on these commissions and let them be a voice. Because their voices are rarely heard in Winooski, and I think it'd be great to have. Oh, am I done?
No, just 15 seconds more.
Oh, sorry. It's a tough question to answer in a minute, but again, we have many great commissions. I think we need to get more voices and hear from everybody in Winooski, as we are a very diverse community here. So
great, thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Bryn, again, I'm apologizing to offer for our 1 minute spot on this important topic, but tell us what you can in that time, Bryn.
Thank you. And I actually also want to thank Dallas for bringing this question to the forum and highlighting it. And in fact, it's representative of having half the time to answer such an important question. It should be top of the core of the forum question list. This is a pressing matter for years, and we are all very, very privileged to not have to live those experiences day in and day out. I advocated for the mayor to sign the My Brother's Keeper pledge last year, and for a review of how the police department is meeting 8 Can't Wait. I think that our dollars speak more than words. And as Jim pointed out, that we need to ensure adequate funding for these programs that are slated within the next year or two. In addition, as a councillor, I'll ask for a full policy and ordinance review to see what barriers are there, where are blind spots, and to ask for leaders to come and help us with our blind spots. The police department has a great partnership with the Howard Center, and I would fully support continuing that relationship to address issues that are mental health in nature and don't require police force to respond.
Thank you, Bryn. I want to pause just for a second because the producer is telling me something. We're not going to take another call, but I just have to check. 1 minute. They're telling me something about the time. So it might be that we're going to extend your closing statements.
I was just saying, we have 1 minute for closing statements.
1 total minute.
1 minute each for
1 minute.
For closing statements.
Oh, I got it. Okay, 1 minute each. So before we do that, we're talking about racial justice, and we still need to hear from Dallas.
Yes, and I take full responsibility for making us try to tackle this issue in such a short amount of time. But I think we really need to highlight the fact that Winooski is the most diverse town in northern New England, and yet nearly all of our Indigenous residents and half of our Black residents still live below the poverty line as compared to 25% of our white residents, which means that all of these people are struggling just to make rent and find a place to live in a city that claims to celebrate its diversity. So before we can even start giving people seats on commissions, we need to make sure that they have a place to sleep. And so on city council, I would really work hard to make sure that we're finding ways to create and provide quality and affordable, and not just year-to-year housing, but long-term housing solutions for people of color in our community so that they can actually finally have the support that they really deserve. Then we can go forward and start addressing issues that extend beyond that become systematic. Thank you. I hope that addresses it for today.
Great, thank you. I do think it gives viewers and folks who are tuning in a chance to hear a little bit about what each of you has to say when we talk about racial justice, what comes to your mind and what things you choose to highlight. So thank you for bringing that up, Dallas. And I think even though we had 1 minute, y'all did a great job. We're going to take 1 minute each for closing statements. So this is a time to share with our audience. Just now that we've been able to chat, you've introduced yourselves. What is it that you want them to take away and know about you as a candidate? This is the hardest part of this job. This is who's next. I think we would like to start with Jim. And no?
I thought we were starting with James, or is it me again? I feel like I should go last since I went first on the opening.
I hear what you mean. Okay, we can start with James.
Okay. Closing statements. All right. Well, again, my name's James McCormick. I am asking for your support on Tuesday, March 2nd to elect me as your Winooski City Councillor. Please get in touch with me or visit my website, which is jamesmccormick.org. And if I can leave you with one fact, 62% of students in the Winooski school system qualify for free or reduced lunch. I think we need to do better to address the roots of poverty in our community and deal with issues of equality. And lastly, just want to thank the Town Meeting TV for putting this on, and for the 5 candidates, 4 other candidates for being here and engaging with the community. And for those of you at home listening or that will be listening as it gets closer to the election, want to thank you for engaging in our community and through this process.
Great, thank you, James. Sam, can you share with us your closing statements?
Yeah, first off, what I love about this community is the vibrant diversity that this community has to offer, and our local government. Our local government works well with every department. So when you have a team like we do, down at City Hall. When challenges arise, it's good knowing that we're in, great hands of thoughtful members from our community. We do have some big challenges ahead of us. I think, the lack of family size housing, apartments, the Main Street revitalization, that's going to put a lot of stress on commuters. There's a lack of land. How do we grow our tax base? Do we cut services? Do we raise taxes? Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to hear that. So, this council coming in, we'll have a lot of work ahead of us. And, again, my name is Samuel Myers. I'm running for Winooski City Council, and I hope you consider me at the polls. Thank you.
So I'm going to assume you're saying my name again.
Good with the lip reading. Okay. Bryn, yes. Do you have a closing statement for us?
Yes, thank you. I also would want to thank Town Meeting TV. I want to thank all the viewers, the callers, great questions. It's always more exciting for the candidates and more engaging to have participated and very interested residents and citizens. So thank you so much. I really believe that I can bring a perspective of equitability and not just equality to the city, to really hold us accountable on our expenses and to look for creative solutions to addressing known and unanticipated challenges. As we see climate migration is already happening, the need for addressing the issues of the tax burden, the energy burden. I hope that I can count on you for your vote for town meeting day and to write in Bryn and to get all of your friends and neighbors and peers out, because whether or not you are voting for me, it's the voices of the residents that matter the most. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Bryn. Dallas.
My name is Dallas Wheatley. And as a transgender and disabled person who lives and rents in Winooski, I hope I can just provide a much needed voice for some of the most marginalized people in the city. Winooski should be a pillar of support for everyone in our community, much like Vermonters are to each other, and not just to abled white people. I certainly hope that if you trust me enough to elect me as your next city councilor, I can work with the city and with whoever else, all the commissions, anyone who can talk to me and just let me know that you have a problem, and I can work with the city to provide all of our residents with affordable, safe places to sleep at night. Thank you, everybody, for your time and your patience, and thank you so much for welcoming me into your city.
Great. Thank you, Dallas. And Jim, does it make sense that this is it? This is our last closing statement?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So thank you, Christina. Thank you, Sam, Dallas, James, and Bryn for doing this, and for Town Meeting Day, for Town Meeting TV for holding this forum. We didn't get to talk much about the housing issue. I'm really invested in our affordable family-sized housing and in figuring out our incentives to make sure that the development that we get in this city looks like the development we want, and it meets the needs of the families who are here and who want to stay here. As a father, as a homeowner, and as someone who spent a lot of time on housing, I know these intersecting issues are driving too many of our young families out, and they're preventing our seniors from aging in place. And I do want to change that and start making progress. So I encourage you to all go out and vote and to read up on the issues. A vote for me is going to be a vote for affordable quality housing for families and low-income Vermonters. It's a vote to enable people in fixed incomes to stay and grow old here. And it's a vote to build an anti-racist and equitable community of respect and dignity here. And these are things that I can commit to you. I've been working on these, and I'm so ready to keep working on them for the next 2 years.
Great. Thank you, Jim. So to all of you, Jim, James, Sam, Bryn, Dallas, thank you so much for your service, your commitment and engagement with this with your city. And I just want to say to our viewers, thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV, ongoing coverage of local community candidates, budget and ballot items. You can find this and more forums on www.channel17.tv, www.channel17.tv. Don't forget to vote on or before Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Thank you.